in Oahu, and we had a map on the wall that was Pacific centered, and it changed everything. I could see, we have stories of the connections with our people with Hawaiian people, and you could see the whole there. It became very clear. So when I became Poet Laureate, one of the first departments I went to was maps.
Aloha kako, hafade. Welcome to the Hawaii Book and Music Festival and to this conversation produced for the festival by the University of Hawaii's Better Tomorrow Speaker Series. My name is Craig Santos Perez. I'm a professor of creative writing in the English department at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I would like to first acknowledge the Kanaka Oiwi native Hawaiian people of this place, as well as the Aina and Vai of these islands that continue to nourish and sustain us. This event is a Pacific book launch for Living Nations, Living Words, an anthology of First Peoples poetry published by Norton earlier this year. We have the honor of featuring the editor, Joy Harjo, as well as 4 contributors who have genealogical roots to the Pacific: No'u Revilla, Leihua Titano, Brandy Nalani McDougall, and Mahealani Wendt. Let me first introduce our esteemed guest. Joy Harjo is a 23rd Poet Laureate of the United States and a world-renowned performer and writer of the Muscogee Creek Nation. She is the author of plays, children's books, 2 memoirs, and 9 books of poetry. As a musician, she has produced 7 award-winning albums. She has received the Ruth Lilly Prize for Lifetime Achievement from the Poetry Foundation, Guggenheim and NEA fellowships, and the Academy of American Poets Wallace Stevens Award. She is a chancellor of the Academy of American Poets and the chair of the Native Arts and Cultures Foundation. She lives and is Zooming tonight from Tulsa, Oklahoma, where she is a Tulsa Artist Fellow. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before I ask you about the anthology, I just wanted to give you space to say any acknowledgements or thanks that you would like to share.
Aloha. It's so nice to get to be here with you and the poets and the staff and the community, and to be here and share, once again, to help share the poetry, the beautiful poetry that comes from those islands and those waters, which have graced this wonderful anthology that came out, an anthology to celebrate our Indigenous poetry and Indigenous place, because there would be no poetry without these places from which we emerge. So yes. Mahalo, thank you.
Mahalo, Joy. Can you tell us a little bit about the origins and development of the anthology, as well as how it relates to your other signature projects as Poet Laureate?
Well, it is my signature project, but it started out, every Poet Laureate is different. And some don't do a project and they do a year term. Some, if you take on a project, they do 2 years, and I have a 3rd year because of COVID, not because I'm special. That's what I said. But anyway, I decided I wanted to have, a map. I'm very interested in maps, and part of that, I've always been interested, but I remember when I was living in Oahu, and we had a map on the wall that was Pacific centered, and it changed everything. I could see, we have stories of the connections with our people with Hawaiian people, and you could see the whole there. It became very clear. So when I became Poet Laureate, one of the first departments I went to was maps, and decided to do a project that would highlight, one, that it would show that we are part of the land, and I helped pick a map that had no political boundaries that were instituted, with colonization. So there is no boundary between Mexico and the US. There is no boundary between Canada and the US. There are no state boundaries. There are no false names for rivers and oceans and so on. It's just the map is beautiful earth and water. And I always say sky too, even though you can't see the sky, but you know, there. And so that was the map that I chose to put the poets, you know, you see images of the poets and you can hear them speaking about place and reading their poems. And I thought that was important. And we had 50, but wound up with 47 poets. But originally I wanted all the poets, you know, every poet every Indigenous poet we could find on the map. But there's a problem with capacity, you know, with trying to have enough staff. They would still be working on it. If that's what it would be like a 10 or 20-year project. And we didn't have that kind of time or the staff. And so the book came out of that. I thought it was important to have something tangible too. You know, there's the digital, which is cool, and it's accessible. So we also have a teacher's guide coming out. And it might be out already, but it's a teacher's guide to go along with the maps, because these poems could be taught in, you know, in history classes, sociology, all kinds of classes. Yeah.
Well, that's so beautiful. I love the way you talk about this project as a mapping of Indigenous poets, and really allowing us to see the lands and waters in a new way, kind of through these first voices, so to speak. And you know, so grateful for you for all the work you've done as Poet Laureate, but of course throughout your entire career of offering these new maps through which to understand you know, both Indigenous people's history, but also the lands and waters themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so you mentioned there are nearly 50 poets in this anthology. As you were gathering them all together, I'm just curious, were there common themes that you saw emerging from these very diverse voices?
Well, I guess the assignment, or what I'd asked the poets, it was not, we didn't curate the poets necessarily. We curated the poets, but we gave every poet freedom to turn in what they wanted. And we asked that they base their poem on theme of place and displacement, with 4 touch points of visibility, persistence, resistance, and acknowledgement. And each poet could choose where to place themselves. But one thing I noticed was the poems were often quite long. And I thought, well, in a way they had to be. That's a lot to consider. And there's so many ways to consider that. And what I loved was the variety and how people made a place. You know, each poem, I think of poems as like transforming stations, you know, a transforming station in time and place, so to speak. And so they can be corners, they make change, or they're places where change happens. And the change can then happen in the atmosphere, or it can be an affirmation of, okay, here's who we are and where we stand, and so on. So I noticed that about, I was really happy with all of them. You know, they're different, and each one of them, each poem is almost part of that place themselves.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. The anthology, you know, reading it from beginning to end does create a deep sense of emplacement to me, a sense of both rootedness, but also of the many routes and displacements and migrations that Native peoples have experienced across Turtle Island and here in the Pacific. And speaking of those kind of spaces, the anthology is organized into 3 sections. Becoming/east is the first, center/north-south, and then departure/west. I found this a really fascinating structure. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about how that came about.
I don't know, sometimes I think a lot about vertical and horizontal,
Mm.
like a kind of axis. And so that east, of course, is always becoming, but east-west makes a kind of axis of knowing. And I think of the east and the eastern seaboard, and the west and leaving and gaining knowledge. And the middle, or the north and south, is symbolically, it's kind of a center point or an axis of um, the kind of the middle, but it's kind of the middle away from the oceans in a way, away from the oceans, and kind of the belly. I also think of it as body parts. Like the way north is like the top of the head of the whole earth, and so on to the whole earth. So in a way, it kind of mirrors that, but then there's the symbology of what does north mean, south, east, and west. So all of that all at once. I suppose one way you could draw it out would be to draw almost like a spiral, and how that,
Mm.
but
I
that would be
love,
it's a longer discussion. Yeah.
yeah, no, I love that idea of, it being directional, but also, pointing towards the land and the water and of course the sky as well. And thinking about reading the anthology as a spiral is really compelling, I think. As I read, I was very transformed throughout, and hearing those echoes of different poets definitely kind of created this connection across these spiraling geographies and voices. So a very brilliant structure, in my opinion. Thank you. Now I wanted to ask if you would grace us with reading your poem from this anthology entitled Exile of Memory.
Okay, I'll read it. So sometimes I don't read all of it, or I might leave out a little section or two, but we'll see. Anyway, it's Exile of Memory. I wrote it when I took a teaching job in our homelands. We were moved illegally by the United States government, particularly Andrew Jackson, who went against Congress in times very much like the times we've been through lately in this country, and ordered all of our people pushed at gunpoint from our homelands. And I think a lot of people think of us as, we were just hiding out in the woods before that, but no. I had a great uncle who owned the largest horse racing establishment on the eastern seaboard. They moved everyone. They wanted our lands, beautiful lands, and they moved us to Indian Territory in Oklahoma. And then they wanted that too, but that's another story. Exile of Memory. Do not return. We were warned by one who knows things. You will only upset the dead. They will emerge from the spiral of little houses lined up in the furrows of marrow and walk the land. There will be no place in memory for what they see. The houses, the highways, the houses, the stores of interlopers perched over the blood fields where the dead last stood. And then what? You with your words in the enemy's language, do you know how to make a peaceful road through human memory? And what of angry ghosts of history? Then what? Don't look back. In Sunday school, we were told Lot's wife looked back and turned to salt, but her family wasn't leaving paradise. We loved our trees and waters and the creatures and the earths and skies in that beloved place. Those beings were our companions, even as they fed us, cared for us. If I turn to salt, it will be of petrified tears from the footsteps of my relatives as they walked west. I did not know what I would find. The first night we set up our bed in the empty room of our condo above the Tennessee River, they'd heard we were coming. Those who continued to keep the land despite the imposition of newcomers and the forced exile of our relatives. All night they welcomed us, all night the stomp dancers, all night the shell shakers, all night circle after circle made a spiral to the Milky Way. We are still in mourning. The children were stolen from these beloved lands by the government Their hair was cut, their toys and handmade clothes ripped from them. They were bathed in pesticides and now clean, given prayers in a foreign language to recite as they were lined up to sleep alone in their army-issued cages. Grief is killing us, anger tormenting us, sadness eating us with disease. Our young women are stolen, raped, and murdered. Our young men are killed by the police or killing themselves and each other. This is a warning. Heroin is a full companion offering freedom from the gauntlet of history. Meth speeds you past it. Alcohol, elixir of false bravado will take you over the edge of it. Enough chemicals and processed craving and you can't push away from the table. If we pay enough, maybe we can buy ourselves back. Here, there is a singing tree. It sings of the history of the trees here. It sings of Manahui, who stood with his warrior friends on the overlook, staring into the new town erected by illegal residents. It sings of the Civil War camp, the bloody, the self-righteous, and the forsaken. It sings of atomic power and the rise of banks whose spires mark the worship places. The final verse is always the trees. They will remain. When it is time to leave this place of return, what will we say we found here? From out of the mist, a form wrestles to come forth. It is many-legged, of many arms, and sent forth thoughts of many colors. There are deer standing near under the parted, misted sky. As we watch, they smell for water. Green light enters their bodies from all the leaf things they eat. The old Muscogee laws outlawed the Christian religion because it divided the people. We who are relatives of panther, raccoon, deer, and the other animals were soon divided. But Muscogee ways are to make relatives. We made a relative of Jesus, gave him a Muscogee name. We cannot see our ancestors as we climb up the ridge of destruction, but from the dark, we sense their soft presences at the edge of our minds, and we hear their singing. There is no word in this trade language, no words with enough power to hold all this we have become. We are in time. There is no time in time. We are in a Muscogee village far back in time. Igana Jaga, or Mother Earth, is in labor so long in time. The keeper of birthing is tracking her energy in time. My thinking is questioning how this time. A young boy wrestles with two puppies at the doorway. A little girl bearing an old woman's spirit appears with green plants in her hands. Twins play around the edge of the bed. The earth's womb tightens with the need to push. That is all I see because of the fogginess of time. I sing my leaving song. I sing it to the guardian trees, this beloved earth, to those who stay here to care for memory. I will sing it until the day I die.
Mahalo. Thank you so much, Joy, for sharing that such powerful and profound poem. Thank you for continuing to sing throughout your whole life and inspiring all of us to sing as well. Mahalo. Thank you. We're now going to turn to our four poets, and then we'll have Joy join us again at the end with a few final questions about the anthology. Thank you, Joy. All right, I am pleased to introduce our first performer. No'u Revilla is a queer Oiwi poet and educator. She is an assistant professor of creative writing at UH Manoa and is proud to have taught poetry at Pu'uhuluhulu University in the summer of 2019. Her first book of poetry, Ask the Brindled, is forthcoming from Milkweed Editions in fall 2022. Please give a virtual round of applause for No'u.
Mahalo nui, Craig, and mahalo nui, Joy. In the introduction to Living Nations, Living Words, Joy Harjo reminds us that poetry is a crossing place. This summer, Haunani K. Trask, a mentor to so many of us Kanaka Oiwi, crossed from this world to the next. Her poetry, a record of her scorching fire, and the wet, breathing green that grows in her wake. Joy, my gratitude is a mile deep for what you and Haunani make possible for Native women like me today. And as a gay Hawaiian woman myself, I learned from both you and Haunani how to stand stronger in generative refusal, how to resist erasure. And I remember holding your poem, Joy, the poem I Give You Back, so close to my chest, how your words taught me to choose abundance and release fear. In that poem, you write, I release you, my beautiful and terrible fear. I release you. I am not afraid to be hungry. I am not afraid to be full. I am not afraid to be hated. I am not afraid to be loved, to be loved, to be loved, fear. I take myself back, fear. You are not my shadow any longer. Joy, you and Haunani cultivated new ground on which poets like me could love and create fearlessly because you love fearlessly. Your lands and waters, your songs and maps, your elders and descendants. And to Craig and Brandy, you have mentored me over the years, always sharing, never gatekeeping. And your abundance inspires me every day. So in the spirit of abundance, in the spirit of aloha that is inclusive, intergenerational, and aina-based, I read my poem, which Joy so generously included in this anthology, Mahalo Nui Loa. I dedicate this reading to my grandmother, Henrietta Laie Kawai Kanana, who is most likely sitting in Waikapu on the island of Maui with my Auntie Millie, my Auntie Karen, and my father, John Henry Haumea Revilla. Shapeshifters, banned, censored, or otherwise shitlisted, AKA chosen family poem. The one whose ma'i was stolen as she slept. The one who sold everything to live as bite marks. The one named Mai Ai. The one raising his scalp like foil from a pan of meat. You know how many pigs I've killed, he asks. And when he says kill, he means it affectionately. Not I killed pigs to feed my blood, but I slept with pigs, my arms hooked around them. When you love what you kill. The one who thinks he knows who stole the ma'i. The one with o'o feathers instead of hair, the years it took to catch each bird and adorn her head in yellow. The one swallowing a kukui tree for the rest of her life, the one who became the rest of her life. The one still searching for the ma'i. The one meant to be a locked door, but fell in love with the crank of keys. I'd rather hear that sound and die, she said. Now all the doors in Kahului stay open. The one made of open until her drunk mother chased her with a knife, screaming, "You're filthy, you're filthy, you're filthy." She is the cure to everything that hurts, but will never let anyone touch her again. the one growing into long, solid sticks to poke at women who, after kissing another woman for the first time, do not speak for days. In the grove in Ha'o'u, they plant their tongues. The one who slept with the ma'i first. The one who slept with the ma'i last. The one currently sleeping with the ma'i because ma'i was never stolen. The one all remembering, coughing up coconuts as she laughs. Sometimes they call her Grove. Sometimes Ha O U. Mahalo nui loa.
Mahalo na'u for that amazing tribute and just beautiful, elegant reading of that extraordinarily powerful poem. Mahalo. All right, our second author is Leihua M. Titano. Familia en Cabeza Zan Kuetu is a queer Chamorro writer and interdisciplinary artist from Jigo Guahan, and co-founder of Art 25, Art in the 25th Century. She is the author of Inside Me an Island and A Bell Made of Stones. Please give a round of applause for Leihua.
San Hafade Todos Hamzu. Hello, everybody. My name is Leihua. First, I want to extend my gratitude to Joy and all the other beautiful poets who are joining us tonight. I'm happy to be here and to make medicine together. I'm going to read two short poems. The first one is a poem that I'd like to dedicate to introverted romantics everywhere. This is a poem about falling in love with words. It's called Estuary. Something like love found me. I did not tell anyone. Or I did, but the words turned to birdsong on my tongue. Her name, when the body cannot contain the heart. An estuary carries letters, lovely script, trailing, sinuous, backlit in blue pulse. The feathered word that hums about us, between us, is unmoored. What we share, roots of the air. My name, the flower, half this, half that. The great sea has set me in motion, set me adrift, moving me like a weed in the brine river. I have the letters. Our names, both exchanged for the sake of our grandmothers. We could not take up their tongues because their song is part of what we have lost. Weeping bloom without. Here's what the letters contain. Boats, oceans, currents, moons, flowers, nests, unnamed shades of love. We are soilless too. Titano. She reached across the map, set a bloom adrift in the surf to wish my healing. In the bed for weeks, my snapped knee, a misshapen breadfruit, I lulled in a lightless chasm. All the while willing a string of petals to unfurl from my chest. The longest lay seeking her across oceans. Did it find her? She says my name is everywhere she looks. Little red flowers, rarer yellow, both and. Blossoms, street signs, the stars, the ocean, the green, green trees, winged things, flowers, earth, sky, rain. Her name is everywhere I close my eyes. The upward welling when the heart persists. How can you miss what you've never held? I've seen her pictures, something about her eyes, my last love, her mouth. In dreams, I construct a lover of parts. She sees, she sings, but one cannot chance the bird. In dreams, I have everything. In my palms, the bird and feather dust, the have-not breathing as one. In dreams, I am the flower me, all flush and nectar, the bees humming in my cheeks. And my last poem is dedicated to queer Pacific Islanders, all of you, all the time. This is a poem about place and placement and how I'm doing. Current I. The conventional symbol for current is the capital letter I, originating from the French for an intensity of electrical flow measured as a quantity per unit of time. That's the epigraph. Consider, we are made almost entirely of water and electricity. So our vernacular of emotion employs surge, wave, spark, impulse and current, the flood of salt or rush of crackling blue pulse of arcing rivulet, a measurement of with and without. The ecstatic penetration of sperm into egg, we have all seen the microscopic iconography. The wombless state will ordain this, the electric moment of life, will brand each womb sanctified property. My mother was conceived during a war waged on brown bodies and birthed me under a moon obscured by flags. Electric layers of ocean reveal themselves as an ancestral coding of me and her and her and her, as the spear and the plunge, the cavern of handprints, the caverns of decapitation. The lightning spark cannot be created because it was already there. In the gloam, human nostalgia presses to know where, when, which gods touch the first impulse of light into darkness, first enacted a separation of shadow into meaning. Yet I fork, bead, ribbon the light into existence, insistence, with each sloughing of saltwater blood, each recollection of current. I, Tanu Itzamoru. Our people were shaped from stone and the pulsing sea, sister's crouched body, wave kneaded, salt lapped until we tumbled from her, of them, all strong, strong and whole together. Birds regarded our seafoam anklets, our slippery ropes of hair, our cheeks full of pebbles and scattered from the shore, singing. We opened our new mouths to our own chorus crooning, sister, brother. We are sun, moon, sky, water, earth, all siblings. Current. I believe in reincarnation in so much as I know an ancestor passed to me the memory of making oneself into a universe, one self, current, connected to, no, concurrent with every iteration of subatomic movement. How then am I queer, queered? I am also only queer because there is a world outside of mine. If the world were only me, I would seem just so. A microcosmos of animal, mineral, plant, light, electric eye, current, yet the world. Here's what I can say. I am I, warrior I, glacier I, photon I, vine I, rivulet I, integer I, summoner I, wave I, exhalation I, mother I, lava I, hilum I, Haifa I, I, current, prism I, and culture bending through me. The world spits, grapples, tries to tie me up in basements to rid themselves of my insistence. Ancestor wired me a path within, inside the brick spaces, throughout and becoming the walls and clouds I. Swallow bolts, I expand, I empty, I carry within 100,000 wombs of spectacular light. Saina ma'asi.
Raina Ma'asi Leihua, that was such an amazing reading, both poems offering so much electricity and currents of identity and, you know, just connection across these vibrant spaces. Thank you so much. Okay, our third poet is Brandy Nalani McDougall, a Kanaka Oiwi poet raised on Maui. She is the author of The Salt Wind, Ka Makani Pa'akai, and Finding Meaning, Kauna and Contemporary Hawaiian Literature. She is an associate professor of American Studies at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. So please give a warm welcome to Brandy.
Aloha mai kako. Mahalo to everyone for joining us, and mahalo nui loa to Joy for creating this beautiful anthology that we're all in. I have so much gratitude to you, Joy. Your poetry has really touched me and shaped me as a poet myself for many years now, for most of my life now. I wanted to take this time actually to also kind of follow as No'u did, sharing a little bit or reading a little bit of a poem that in particular that really touched me. And this poem is called When the World as We Knew It Ended. And I'm not going to read the entirety of the poem, but just a few of the verses before I share my own work that's in this amazing anthology, Living Nations, Living Words. Anyway, this poem by Joy, When the World as We Knew It Ended. And this is toward the end, or the last few verses. We heard it, the racket in every corner of the world, as the hunger for war rose up in those who would steal to be president, to be king or emperor, to own the trees, stones, and everything else that moved about the earth, inside the earth, and above it. We knew it was coming, tasted the winds who gathered intelligence from each leaf and flower, from every mountain, sea, and desert, from every prayer and song, all over this tiny universe, floating in the skies of infinite being. And then it was over. This world we had grown to love, for its sweet grasses, for the many colored horses and fishes, for the shimmering possibilities while dreaming. But then there were the seeds to plant and the babies who needed milk and comforting, and someone picked up a guitar or ukulele from the rubble and began to sing about the light flutter, the kick beneath the skin of the earth we felt there beneath us, a warm animal, a song being born between the legs of her, a poem. Mahalo, Joy, for that. I think, you know, I'm teaching a class right now that's focused on anti-colonial art and activism, and we actually just recently read your work in conversation with other just amazing anti-colonial activists and artists. And you know, we've been thinking a lot about the ways in which the apocalypse that is colonialism has reverberated throughout time, and your work does so much to expose that and to make that more visible to people. So mahalo. I'm going to read my poem in this collection, which is called This Island on Which I Love You. And I wrote it as a love poem for Craig Santos Perez, and also for our daughters, Kaikaina Li'i and Ku'ule Hiva Hiva. This island on which I love you. And when on this island on which I love you, there is only so much land to drive on, a few hours to encircle an entirety, and the best of our lands are touristed, the beaches foam-laced with rainbowing suntan oil, the mountains tattooed with asphalt, pocked by telescope domes, hotels and luxury condos blighting the line between ocean and sky. I find you between the lines of such hard edges, sitting on the kamsu stool, a bowl of coconut freshly grated at your feet. That I hear the covert jackling of helicopters and jets overhead all night through our open jalousies, that my throat burns from the scorch of the grenaded graves of our ancestors, the bog that smears the ko'olaus into a blur of greens, that I wait to hear the grind of you blending vegetables and fruit, machine whirl crunching coffee beans, your shoulder blades channeling ocean, a steady flux of current. Past the guarded military testing grounds, amphibious assault vehicles emerging from the waves, beyond the tangles of tarp cities lining the roads, past the thick memory of molasses coating the most intimate crevices of coral, by the box jellyfish congregating under Olepau and Kaloa moons, at the park beneath the emptied trees. I come to find you shaking $5 coconuts because this is all we have on this island, listening to the water to guess its sweetness and youth. On this island on which I love you, something of you is in the rain rippling through the wind that makes the pipes of Waikiki burst open. Long brown fingers of sewage stretch out from the canal and pesticided tendrils flow from every ridge out to sea. And so we stay inside to bicker over how a plumeria tree moves in the wind. Let our daughters ink lines like coarse rootlets in our notebooks, crayon lines into ladders on our walls and sheets. Their first sentences are sung, moonlit blowhole plumes of sound, calling pebbles to couple, caverns to be carved, uwala to roll down the hillside again, and I could choke on this gratitude for you all. This island is alive with love. It storms the cough of alchemy, expelling every parasitic thing, teaching me to love you, with the intricacies of island knowing, to depend on the archipelagic spelling of you lying next to me. Our blue screen flares their own floating islands after our daughters have finally fallen asleep. To trust in the shape and curve of your hand, reaching out to hold mine, making and remaking an island our own. Yeah. Mahalo nui loa, and just wanted to also just extend my aloha to all the other just really brilliant poets that I'm reading with today. Mahealani, No'u, Leihua, all of you are just amazing. And I have been really blessed to be a part of this reading with all of you, as well as with Joy, you as well. And also, this poem was for you, Craig. Mahalo nui loa for facilitating this event for us. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Brandy, for teaching me the intimacies of island knowing, as you put it, and for articulating so much love, both for your ohana as well as for Joy with your first poem. Mahalo. Our final reader is Mahealani Wendt, the author of the poetry book Ulu Hai Malama and the co-editor of Ho'olaulea, celebrating 10 years of Pacific writing. She has been published in numerous literary journals and anthologies, and she has also, for many decades, directed an Indigenous rights law firm here in Hawaii. Please welcome Mahealani.
Thank you, Craig, and thank you all. If someone wrote such a beautiful poem for me, I would be, I would be crying. I'm just so moved by that lovely poem that Brandy just shared, and equally touched by all of you. It's such a great honor I wrote a very long poem that really was intended to celebrate and honor the people of East Maui, who for over a century fought for restoration of the streams that fed their lo'ikalo or taro patches. And it's really just it's a very small measure of my highest regard and respect for our kua'aina, the people of this land. And it is also a love poem for my husband, although it won't read that way. I just honor him in every way because he led the struggle during his 30 years of his life. So it's a long poem, and I hope I don't go over long, but I will start with some excerpts. The first, Mahi'ai Kalo, taro farmer. All his life loving earth, a living harrow waist deep in mud, planting, tilling, trenching, shoveling, plowing, mud to field, gravel to path, stones to bank, yoked no less than animal to plow. A year of this, then huki'ai harvest, shouldering the heavy bags, heaving, lifting, hauling, slogging through acres of taro fields, ancient footpaths, fragile Hawaii wetlands, swollen feet, hands, torqued elbows, knees, pestilences, infestations, droughts, year after year, year after year, for love of family, love of ancestors, love of the elder brother, for love of Ha'aloa. 2, Lo'ikalo, taro fields. As far as I could see, their green hearts were laid bare under rains that never ceased falling, a much aggrieved sun. The dim glint of it threw upstart clouds, but always the rains, and he was glad for the God's beneficence and the harbingers who coaxed sunlight's bright threads. The auku'u, herons, hovering then ensconced in pools of watery green expanse, their emanations of light vectoring the same paths trod, the same earth, the same ancient waterways the ancestors walked. He regarded the plants hungrily, the same green ones whose presentiments were his elder brother, Halo Anakalau Kapalili, vivified, who was born of the gods Wakea and Ho'ohoku Okalani, their union a conflagration of heaven and brightening stars. Their firstborn, the elder brother, stillborn, buried. Ho'ohoku Okalani's tears unceasing until the quickening, shimmer of green engraven earth, the unfurling leaves, and the risen Haloa, progenitor, his offspring, the stalwart green-hearted ones who followed growing up out of the same earth again and again. He called them koa, warriors, as they hoisted their green banners, forming leaf arbors under sun's radiance, their stems rooted deep, their arbors protecting parents, grandparents, the corm ma'akua, protecting children, grandchildren, oha, the offshoots, succoring, cradling them, millennia of generations turning, returning, e huli, hoi. The ancestors called their names, auspicious names, their offspring, naming their offspring in dreams through keen observations, ho'ailona, signs, close attentions to minutiae of corm, stem, petiole, rhizome, shimmering sun, wind, sea clouds and earth, cradle of the hallowed ancestors, and the risen Ha'aloa. Give us the right names, the Makua prayed, dispatched their entreaties, released them. Mana ulu, mana opelo, mana veo, mana uli, mana ula ula, moi piko Leihua hakea hapa hapa pu. Were names given, and many more. All his life he knew and never forgot their names, sacred from the first. They were the names of the generations of his elder brother. They were the names of his family. They were the names of Kalo. Naming the waters. And this section is for the 27 streams that were restored after almost a century and a half in 2018, a tribute to the resilience and fighting spirit and love of ancestors of the people of this village of Wailua Nui and Ke'anai in East Maui. Naming the waters. Ikavao na hele in the god realms of Ko'olau Ka'aina Ikavaya Kane, the lands of the waters of Kane, the sons and daughters of Haloa, named the waters. Where the long waters fell seaward, ravishing black stones, where the eyes smarted from back spray, and in dark depths like stars, the seed pearl oysters, their faint songs could be heard. The name Makapipi was given. Where V hihivai shells migrated upstream and down, where V groves grew as thickets, seeding the lands, where V wind sounds were heard, the name Hanavi was given. Where the waters scudded cloud-like as though firmament, where a red sheen was seen above, signifying the presence of sacred ones, the name Ka'aula was given. Where the Mo'o goddess was well pleased and smiled at her own reflection in the shadow waters, the name Waia'aka was given. Where limestone beds of Ako'ako'a formed and the Ulumaika stones were shaped, the name Pa'akea was given. The narrow-necked gourds for water carrying gave Wai'ohue its name. Ravenous Kamapua'a, the pig god, his stampeding hordes, gave Pua'aka'a its name. Where Wauke was needed to kapa fine transparency, stained with akala berries for red birth gift, Kopiliula was the name given. Where two waters converged and O'opu scaled waterfalls, where Pele's sister, the sorceress Kapoma Ilele, removed her genitals, sent them flying to thwart the rotting pig god Kamapua, his lust for Pele. Wailua Iki was the name given. Where Kane Kapahuvai, Kane of the great water source, where he was seen in the heavenly clouds, in the verdant mountainward ridges, where he was seen in the red-tinged rainbow, where he was rain, lightning flashes, where he slept in the glowing light, where his great heart was heard in the thundering waterfalls, cascading stones, quaking corals, where kalo was planted along the high ridges, where it was planted in the wide valleys, where it was planted inland of the teeming shores, kaulana na aina kalo anahoa aina, where famous were the kalo lands and the people who cultivated them. Wailua Nui was the name given. Where the gods Kane and Kanaloa refreshed themselves in springs near groves of red and yellow Leihua, Ohia was the name given. Where the stout-stemmed Olona grew, where in frigid waters the strands were immersed, cured, braided into fine white cordage for canoe lashings, fishing lines, nets, where it was plaited for chiefly raiment, Ahu'ula, Kahili, Lei, Mahiole, where the stout-stemmed Olona grew, Vai'anu was the name given. Where fine-grained Milo were shade trees for the old chiefs, where wind storms incised the heartwood, the omens carved into god likenesses, made into canoe paddles, serving bowls, implements for planting, where prolific headwaters were called Moana, the name Wai'okamilo was given, where Mai'a was food curative, unguent, where its broadleaf canopies were rain coverings, enclosures, where spring waters bubbled up through igneous stone, Akeke, the name Palauhulu was given. Sentience along the high ridges, an exhilaration of climbing, of mounting, gave Pi'ina'au its name. Where thundering rains poured down hollows, caves, ravines, sidewise, where the tumult echoed down ridges, sidewise along boulder-strewn sea cliffs, where earth shuddered and heaved with new sounds, where great schools of fish hearkened, where the torrents narrowed, Nua Ailua was the name given. Where the torrents were made wide, Honamanu was the name given. Where hapu'u amau'u hala ohe niu lolu ki halapepe ulu. Where mamaki iliahi wiliwili koa palapalai pala'a. Where kukui hau milo kamani ava. Where cherished forest plants grew, the name Punalau was given. Where tapa-beating logs were harvested, the black and red berries stained for dyes, the name Kolea was given. Where a glowing light appeared above the ridgeline, signifying the presence of Kane, the name Ha'ipua'ena was given. Where in cold springs Ali'iwahine bathed, the name Vaiakamo'i was given. Where the Ali'iwahine ran to the flat hiding stone, where she found refuge from the pig god Kamapua'a, the name Wahinipe'e was given. No ka mea, he maui noa akua lākou, e ola noa lākou a pau. In the God-inspired naming, the people remembered. Because they remembered, the waters lived. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo, Mahealani, for reading that beautiful poem, for naming so much of these islands, for honoring those names, for remembering those names, and all the work that you and your husband have done to protect and defend those waters so that they may flow again. And in your words, I felt myself surrounded by those waters as well, just in your voice. So mahalo for sharing that with us today.
Mahalo nui.
Joy, you have amazing taste in Pacific poetry.
There's amazing Pacific poets. I guess Imai was not here tonight. I wanted to acknowledge him too.
Yes, we
And
wanted Imai Kalani Kalahele to join us today, but could not. But his poem is also in the anthology, so we of course recommend everyone listening to purchase the anthology if you're able. I wanted to ask you, Joy, just one last question. You've worked so hard to include Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander authors in a lot of the work you've done. And you kind of alluded to it earlier. I'm just curious if you can share with us here at the Hawaii Book and Music Festival some of your connections that you have to Hawaii and the larger Pacific.
well, where do I start? No'u brought up, of course, beautifully and acknowledged Hananike Trask. And she was the first Pacific Islander, the poet from these islands that I met, and I found a sister with her. And we became friends. We used to write letters to each other. And there was that reading. She brought me in at one point, I think it was 92, somewhere around there, to perform with Dana Naoni Hall and the three of us. And that's actually on tape. It's available somewhere in the archives. And so I was first brought there, but I've always felt this deep love and connection. And eventually I lived there for a while, for about 11 years, and was paddled with nappies, a nui, canoe club, and then later with Huinalu. And I co-wrote with Lurleen, the writer, Lurleen Wailana McGregor, Between the Deep Blue Sea and Me. We co-wrote the screenplay and worked again with another incredible giant of a human being, Marata Mita, consultant. We wrote that screenplay. She was amazing, and I miss her. And I will always miss Hanani K and Amarata Mita. I remember her coming up to the house and us working on this play that Lurleen later turned into her novel, Between the Deep Blue Sea and Me. But I think that ultimately, if you look at the way Earth moves and waters, we're all connected. All of us are part of this larger story. There's connections. We have stories about how our at least some of the Muscogee people, because we weren't all one, you know, we're groups of people, but some of us are connected to, there's a story about 7 canoes from Hawaii being part, you know, coming to our people and being part. And it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of correspondences, and a similar, like aloha for in our language is anogechka. Same thing. A lot of the same principles of being and connection and acknowledgement of Aina and the ocean and movement and spiral and all of that. But yeah, it's and some of it I don't always totally understand. I return. I live in Oklahoma, far from you, but not far in my dreams. I talked to Lurleen earlier, and I said, you know, there we were, I was in the ocean. I go to the ocean in my dreams and go in, and I said, we were out in the deep blue. No, there's a word for that, way out in the deep blue. And so then when I wake up, I feel refreshed. We all need that. One thing I learned when I was living there is that I needed to go clean. That salt, that water, the sun on the water, and all of that. And we certainly need a cleaning right now in this world. You know, and we're getting it sometimes by fire, sometimes by water, you know, in all the ways that happens. And poetry, I believe, and I know that your peoples know that and believe it, and so do we, that our words, they're living. Hanani K knew that, knows it, you know, that her words are living, they live within us. And the words of her ancestors, our ancestors. We didn't just come here. I've come to, understand that what I do is not just me. It's because there were many others before me. And I'm kind of the wake, I'm kind of in the wake of it. If I think of an eye, I'm really not the person. I'm kind of in the wake of this ancestral, the waves of the ancestral pathing. And so, but I'm really happy that this anthology came out, and that out of it there's now a collection, an audio collection of Indigenous voices at the Library of Congress. It's part of their permanent collection. And mahalo nui loa to all of you for agreeing to be part of it. And we're gathered here. So in a way, the book becomes a kind of living circle. As we heard, I loved hearing everyone tonight, hearing the voices, because it might be written, but it really comes down to the voices and that kind of energy. So thank you. Mado.
Well, thank you so much, Joy, for sharing about your connections here to the Pacific. We look forward to the day where we can welcome you back in person to these salt waters, and be able to spend time on the beach, eating and talking story with you again. Mahalo for your inspiring work, vision, and passion in your now your 3rd term as the U.S. Poet Laureate. Thank you for just your career's worth of work, healing, and as Leihua put it, is medicine. Thanks for bringing us all together in this spiral dream of an event today. Of course, mahalo to Norton for publishing the anthology, and to the Library of Congress as well. Mahalo to the amazing poets, No'u, Leihua, Brandy, Mahealani, for sharing your beautiful words today. I feel so moved, and really just moving into this weekend with a really buoyed spirit. Mahalo to Roger Jelinek and the staff at the Hawaii Book and Music Festival for today's program. For everyone listening, please check out their website. They have several more weeks of events and literary readings and talks and so on. Mahalo also to Robert Perkinson and the staff of Better Tomorrow Speaker Series for producing today's program. They too have many events coming up, so you should follow them on Twitter to stay updated. Mahalo for everyone for joining us today. More than 100 folks were able to listen to us share our words and celebrate and launch this anthology. Please, all of you, stay safe, take care of yourselves, read Native poetry, and have a really nice weekend. Mahalo and Saina Ma'asi.